Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. I'm reminded we were here just a few years ago to celebrate the passage of what was at the time the strongest equal pay bill in the country, which now 41 other states have introduced using our template in hopes that we can make this a national effort. And today we're here to talk about another national effort. I have with me, standing with me, and in the speaking order will be Noreen Ferrell, the Executive Director of Equal Rights Advocate, Mira Sorvin, actress and Academy Award winner, Rosanna Arquette, actress and also many award winner, along with Chantal Cousineau, who is an actress and member of the Screen Actors Guild and who gave very, very forceful testimony in Sacramento, which was successful and very helpful in getting this legislation passed. We also have with us Senator Connie Leyva, who is the chair of the California Legislative Women's Caucus and the author of Senate Bill 820. We also have Assemblymember Monique Lemona, who is the vice chair of the California Legislative Women's Caucus. Assemblymember Laura Friedman, who is the chair of the Subcommittee on Sexual Harassment Prevention and Response. And finally, Assemblymember Eloise Reyes from San Bernardino, who also is doing excellent work in this field. So thank you all for joining us here today. And it is fitting that we would be in this august library named for one of the great sheroes in American history, a woman of courage and vision and persistence. And that is what we are here to talk about today, is the need for this kind of continued effort to deal with sexual harassment and sexual assault in the workplace. I'm State Senator Hannah Beth Jackson. I am the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, past chair of our Legislative Women's Caucus, and the proud author of two of the bills we will be discussing here today. And I want to thank those who are standing with me today. These women fought to dismantle the structures that have allowed sexual harassment to continue unabated for far too long. As I mentioned, we have actresses Mira Sorvin, Rosanna Arquette, and Chantal Cousineau, who have risked their careers to bravely call out this unwelcomed and outrageous behavior by sharing their stories of harassment by powerful men who used fear and intimidation to silence women for decades. We also have with us our women lawmakers, as I mentioned, who have all fought tirelessly for the reforms we're celebrating and remain committed to taking this work even further. We have only just begun in a battle that we will win. And so each of my colleagues will talk briefly about their legislation as well as the work that is still left to be done. And finally, we have with us the relentless, determined Noreen Ferrell, who is the leader of Equal Rights Advocates and who was instrumental with her organization in pushing forward many of these bills to the finish line. And it is no easy task when preventing harassment is deemed by the California Chamber of Commerce as a job killer. So, why are we here today? The Me Too movement dramatically and forcefully helped lift the veil of a rampant culture of sexual harassment and assault that has pervaded our workplace for far too long. They have done so by sharing powerful stories about the impact it has had on them and other women, our emotional well-being, careers, and lifetime earnings. This movement has also exposed the complex legal and cultural factors that have enabled perpetrators of sexual harassment and assault to continue their behavior. And as a result of this movement and the selfless acts of the advocates who are here today, a number of powerful perpetrators have been subsequently exposed and fired. Yet, as important as it is that we hold these perpetrators responsible and accountable for their behavior, it has become clear that preventing sexual harassment in the workplace must involve more than what we are doing in these types of instances. Enabled by our work culture and stifled by legal challenges, moving toward a harassment-free culture requires comprehensive policy and legal reforms that allow victims to seek justice, to know their rights, and to speak out about abuse, all while effecting meaningful cultural change at work, and to do so without fear of reprisal or retaliation. Those are critical concepts that we will continue to work on. And as people come forward, brave and courageous leaders, celebrities have a spotlight on their own industry. But beyond that, they have served as a voice for the otherwise voiceless. And spurred by survivors from across the state who have stood up to say Me Too, the women of California's legislature seized this critical moment in this history to create lasting change statewide and within our own institution. Such changes that I've mentioned here include two bills that I introduced that became law with the help of everyone in this standing behind me. SB 1300 will become law on January 1st. This measure combats sexual harassment in the workplace by closing loopholes in the law that have up to now discouraged and prevented victims from speaking out. It's allowed employers to avoid sexual harassment and discrimination laws and left employees vulnerable to sexual harassment at work. Specifically, SB 1300 provides direction to the courts on what is severe and pervasive behavior which qualifies meeting the legal standard for sexual harassment litigation so that it's applied fairly in court to protect victims. This legislation also prohibits what we call non-disparagement clauses and sneaky releases where employers will put before you an agreement where you might be getting a raise or additional work, but within that document, you are waiving your rights to bring an action for their outrageous behavior. These are now going to be prohibited by law. And I didn't see that applause line in my notes, but thank you very, very much. And it will prevent the kind of thing that prohibits victims from speaking out about abuse and will allow them to seek justice. The law was informed by a series of hearings that were held, and in response to the culture of harassment in Silicon Valley and Hollywood, among other places, I also authored SB 224, which specifically expands sexual harassment protections to prohibit sexual harassment by investors, like we've seen up in Silicon Valley, by directors and producers, like we've seen in Hollywood, elected officials, and lobbyists, like we have seen up in Sacramento. So these bills are not, though, just about larger-than-life people. We need to dig deeply into our most vulnerable workers' circumstances, janitorial staff, farm workers, hotel employees, and other vulnerable populations, many of whom work alone. We recognize and are dealing with the problem at all levels, and while we've made great strides, there is so much more to do. So, without further ado, because I've asked my colleagues only to speak for 2 minutes, so I have to try to at least set an example, but I am so honored and privileged to be here today and to be standing with these extraordinary women as these new laws will become effective January 1. And so without further ado, please allow me to introduce Noreen Ferrell, the Executive Director of Equal Rights Advocates. Noreen.
We got a room of some powerful people here. I'm very excited to join you. I'm Noreen Ferrell. I'm the Executive Director of Equal Rights Advocates. We co-sponsored Senate Bill 1300 and 224 and supported the other bills that you're going to hear about today. My organization has been fighting sexual harassment for over 45 years, and we're doing it right alongside our fights for fair pay, fair representation, equal access to high-paying jobs. And so this work is really core to the women we represent. We represent women who work in offices, who clean buildings, who teach our kids, who serve restaurants, who labor in the fields that grow our vegetables. Many are low paid, as Senator Jackson mentioned. They are immigrant, they are women of color who face really compounded discrimination. We also serve women who work in the gig economy, who aren't in traditional employment relationships, who want to start their own companies, who are making great films, who work in our state capitol. And they told us, enough is enough. Help us work. Help us support our families without fear being grabbed or silenced or retaliated against. And we felt we owed it to them, the people here and all of the people across genders who have helped us with these bills. We felt like we had to turn this Me Too revolution into a policy revolution, to change the laws that were allowing predators to work alongside them. I think that when you work in this work as long as we have, you understand what momentum looks like. You understand that these are moments to seize. And we are here right now because we did seize that moment. Equal rights advocates joined these incredible legislators behind me. We joined co-sponsors like the California Employment Lawyers Association. We Said Enough, which is representing women who work in the Capitol. The Stronger California Women's Advocate Network. We also joined, as you've heard, a dream team from Hollywood like Mira Sorvin and Rosanna Arquette and Chantal, who you'll hear from. And we joined together to really seize this moment, to stand up for millions of women across industries with a powerful slate of bills that are the nation's strongest protections against harassment for workers who are in traditional workplaces and those who are in the gig economy and outside traditional employment relationships. And what I find so powerful about the bills that are going to go into effect on January 1 is that they're about prevention. Senate Bill 1300 abolishes the one free grope rule that was embraced by some courts. It makes clear that you cannot condition bonuses on silence. I'm not kidding, okay? It makes it clear that you can't condition bonuses on silence that will keep perpetrators in the workplace. Senate Bill 224 is clear that female entrepreneurs can pitch their companies and actors can read their scenes without being propositioned or worse. These bills go such a long way to make sure that all of us across genders can work, that we can support our families, that we can be creative, that we can have dreams, right? That we don't have to be distracted or harmed or encumbered by perpetrators or harassment. I mean, just imagine that. It sounds like a Hollywood script, right? I really want to thank the people behind me and all the people who helped to make these bills a reality. We're just getting started. We've used the hashtag #TakeTheLead for this slate of bills because California is leading the country. We are leading other states. We are certainly leading what's happening in Congress. And we won't stop until we pass this entire slate, not just in California, but in every state of the country and at the federal level, because our civil rights should not depend on our zip code. Harassment and assault can no longer be the price of a paycheck. We really look forward to implementing these bills, working with great workers and survivors and great companies to make sure that there's life breathed into them. And we really look forward to a year ahead of pushing new reforms that will make sure that workplaces pay us more, touch us less, and treat us with the dignity and respect that all of us deserve. Thank you. Let me introduce Mira Sorvin.
Hello, everyone. It's so wonderful to have you all turning out today for this. This is a day of celebration. This is a day of hope. This is a day of positive reckoning of where we've been and where we are now and where we're going. And to say that this is the fruit of a year of labor, or more, of everyone standing behind me, is a really sweet moment. You know, a little over a year ago when I and these wonderful ladies, Chantal and Rosanna, and so many others came out against men of power who were very abusive of that power, harassing, abusing, assaulting, raping, coerced relationships. We never knew where it was going to go. And because I've been an activist for many years, first with Amnesty International as their Stop Violence Against Women campaign spokesperson, and since 2009 as the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime Goodwill Ambassador on Human Trafficking, I've come to feel that awareness without action is hollow. And I've said this before, so as soon as I decided to go public with my allegations against Harvey Weinstein, I decided, what am I going to do to change the situation? How are we going to turn this terrible situation and bear some positive fruit out of it? And I was blessed that I was approached by equal rights advocates to join their efforts to promote the Take the Lead bill. I have to thank you so much, Noreen. I have to thank Jessica. I have to thank Rosanna and Patricia Arquette, who reached out to me. And from the beginning, we held a SAG event, and both Connie and Hannah Beth were there. And we saw that our community, and our community is just one small member of the business community of California, was rife with sexual harassment and abuse and misconduct. And not only women, but men and former child actors. People have been harassed by their agents, by their directors, by their producers. So many different people were told that they would have to have sexual relationships in order to advance themselves, and that is just disgusting. And we took that forward, and so we realized the need was very strong, and a very committed group of us, I'd say a core group of the actresses involved, really, we started hitting the pavement and working on trying to give these bills wings. And you know, some of us went up to Sacramento, not me, but actually gave incredible testimony that changed things, I think, for people to hear it firsthand. I got on the phone with people. I harassed various assembly members and senators. I was like, hello, I'm Mira Sorvin. I'm an activist and a survivor, and here's what we want you to know about how the Me Too Survivors Network, which is millions strong, feels about making California the strongest state in the nation against sexual harassment, and how we want you to stand with Me Too and stand with workers and stand with women. And, you know, there's almost 20 million workers in this state. That's gigantic how much effect these laws will have on their work environment. I can tell you, as a victim of retaliation for refusing sexual overtures by Harvey Weinstein, that it derails an entire career. It can drastically impact your ability to earn money, to provide for your family, and it destroys the American dream concept that this is a meritocracy. We should all be able to pursue our dreams and provide a living for our family no matter what field we're in. And don't worry about actors if you don't want to. Worry about the woman who's a month away from homelessness if she doesn't bring home a paycheck, and her boss at her restaurant or the field that she's working in, or, you know, any blue collar or white collar job is saying, you're going to get fired if you don't sleep with me. And I've said before that sexual harassment is the gateway drug. So harassers and predators use this as a testing ground to say, okay, if I can get her or him to comply with this pressure, then it bodes that that person is probably then going to become the victim of more serious onslaughts, the assault, rape, coerced relationships. And so we all got involved in trying to get these all the way through all the various stages of the House and the Senate in California, and we did that. And we gave interviews, we did press conferences, but then it got to the point where it was on Governor Brown's desk, and they sat there until the very last few hours of the month. The very last few hours of the month in which he could sign them or veto them. And we really ramped into action then. Rosanna wrote an op-ed, I wrote an op-ed for the LA Times. I went on Alex Michelson's show and talked very, very specifically about what each one of these laws meant to us. And then I started writing personal letters to the governor through anyone I knew who knew him. And I don't know if he ever read them. I don't know. But I do know that he got, if he opened it, he got the last one the day before that Sunday. And I said, I just want you to know personally as a Me Too survivor how terrible this will feel if you veto these bills, these take the lead bills that we have worked on, that we decided to take our survivor energy and our pain and our sense, our thirst for justice. And if you, for no apparent reason, veto these bills, it will be a terrible slap in all of our face, and it will feel like all of our effort and goodwill and hard work went for nothing. Well, thank God he did sign 3 of the bills that I was writing him about into law. And these are going to make a real difference in people's lives. And I'm so proud, and I'm telling the rest of you survivors out there in the ether who are watching this today that there's forward movement. We are making change. We are making progress. And today's headlines helped us feel a little bit more that way too. But thank you so much here. Please push this out. Please let people know about these changes. We want employers to know they may no longer coerce people through paperwork to stay silent, even when there is real and illegal abuse happening. We want people to know that they can't put their hand under somebody's shirt once and squeeze their breast and get away with it. We want agents and investors that entrepreneurs meet with to know they cannot ask for a quid pro quo relationship. If you sleep with me, I will invest in your company. And we want everyone to know that this really is America the Great, the place of a meritocracy where everyone's dreams should be able to come through without any of this ridiculous nonsense. So thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Rosanna Arquette, and a lot of people always come and ask me to speak in places, and I say, please, just get Mira Sorvin. She's so good at it, and I need a script. But I just wanted to say I'm honored to be here today, to not only recognize the progress we've made this year, but also emphasize what more we can do. The past year has never been about a witch hunt. It has never been about one man or even hundreds of men. The past year has been about change. It has been about acknowledging the injustices and indignities working women face on any given day, and then doing something about it. Seeing Harvey Weinstein being held criminally accountable for his deeds is, of course, encouraging, but it's not enough. We are seeing a paradigm shift, a shift away from silence and complicity to a world where actions and words have consequences. A shift away from protecting abusers and an abusive system, and to recognizing the needs of people who survive them. A shift to a system in which the laws fully protect the workers they were designed to protect. The new laws that we are celebrating here today are an important step in the right direction, and we can't stop now. Going forward, we look forward to supporting even bolder legislation to combat harassment and abuse and address the broader systems of gender injustice, and in order to ensure that women and their families are able to thrive and succeed. And I want to thank all of you here who've made this happen. Thank you so much.
I'm Chantal Cousineau. Thank you so much, Rosanna and Mira, for your thoughtful words and unwavering support. It was your bravery and that of all the Harvey Weinstein survivors that got the country and the whole world standing up to say enough. In that inspired moment of the Me Too movement, I came forward and spoke to the LA Times reporter Glenn Whipp to share my experience having been sexually harassed by my director James Toback on a movie called Harvard Man. 2 days after the article was published, there were 395 women saying Me Too. Supported by my guild, SAG-AFTRA, and its strong visionary president, Gabrielle Carteris, I joined committees that sought to grow the existing safety infrastructure within the entertainment industry. The truth came out, and our leaders heard our Me Too battle cry. In January, I testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee to support Senator Jackson's bill, SB 224, as part of a collective of culture-shifting legislation we call Take the Lead. These bills look to end the rape culture that continue the exploitation and abuse of California's most vulnerable workers. SB 224 specifically expands the definition of employer to include everyone who can affect your career and makes them responsible as such. Legislative reform is the way to end this dangerous status quo. Accountability, consequence, education, and unity stand to affect lasting change. This is a big day, and I stand on the shoulders of giants, the likes of Rosa Parks and Anita Hill, and I'm honored to bear witness to this unprecedented event. This slate of bills is the first of its kind in the nation, and my hope is that the rest of the country swiftly follows in California's footsteps. You took a stand with your constituents, Senator Jackson and Senator Leyva, and on behalf of a grateful nation, I applaud your continued fight for equality, dignity, and justice for all. Thank you to the trailblazers at Equal Rights Advocates and CELA, my union, for supporting me by way of these Take the Lead bills, and last but not least, for Governor Jerry Brown for signing my safety into law. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Connie Leyva. I'm a state senator representing the Inland Empire and the chair of the Legislative Women's Caucus, which is now 36 women strong. Yes. We certainly have more work to do in getting more women elected, but we are moving in that direction, in the right direction. It's an honor for me to be here today and stand with these amazing Wonder Women behind me and all the Wonder Women who are out there fighting the good fight every single day. When I was elected in 2014, I was shocked at some of the things that were still happening to women. You know, sometimes we live in our own little world. I come from the labor movement, where it didn't matter if you're a man or a woman, everyone got paid the same, everyone, for the most part, was treated the same. And then I found out there's these really horrific things happening. When I heard about Harvey Weinstein and Mira and Rosanna, I said, we have to do something. How is it that secret settlements are legal? How can that be okay? So I authored SB 820, which the governor ultimately signed into law, so it is now illegal in the state of California to enter into a secret settlement. Perpetrators now have to be held accountable. And I just have to tell you that when I was working on this bill, it's always very interesting what you hear from people. And to hear people say to me, Connie, you can't pass this legislation. I said, well, why? Because then women won't get a big settlement. I said, wow, you are completely missing the point. Because when a woman is sexually harassed, assaulted, or even raped at work, and then the perpetrator is allowed to buy her silence, and she then loses her job, her dignity, and respect, and gets money for it, that is wrong. This bill, and now law, is about making sure women have a safer work environment. Women want to go to do work and do two things. They want to be respected at work, and they want to be paid equally as their male counterparts. So I'm so proud to be here today with all of these amazing women, and the amazing women that aren't here today that, like I said, are fighting the good fight. Just know that we will always be there for you in the legislature. It's why most of us got elected. Thank you very much. And now I would like to introduce the vice chair of the Women's Caucus, Assemblymember Monique Lemona.
Buenos dias. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It's an honor to be here with incredible allies. This struggle related to sexual harassment and the role of women, equity for women, has been a struggle for centuries and for decades. And some of those here have been at it for quite some time. But I also reflect that what we're here today is not just to acknowledge those bills that will become law on January 1st, but also there's work ahead of us. In 2019, there were bills that were vetoed, that we must recognize that even though we make steps, this has been a century, decades-long fight that requires that we continue, that we don't stop at where we're at today. I was recently reminded by a conversation that I was having with Girls, Inc., an organization that supports girls, young girls under the age of 18. And they just started a movement because of what these examples have done, and it's the hashtag Girls2 movement. Because what happens is that this doesn't just start when people become adults. This is learned and accepted behavior they've learned somewhere else and when they were younger. And organizations like Girls, Inc. recognize that this is bigger, that we must educate girls and boys at a young age that a woman's body, that a girl's body is to be respected. That the opinion of a young girl is just as great as the opinion of a young boy. And that young girls can do everything that a young boy can do. And so as we move forward, we have to reflect that today is bigger than just what we're seeing here and the laws that have been signed. But today is also a recognition that we must celebrate the work we've done, but remember that we have to move forward and that girls, too, are impacted by harassment, and that it begins at a young age, and that together these allies will work towards ensuring that our community, not just our workplaces, are safe and free of harassment for all girls and women. Thank you, and I would like to invite Assemblymember Laura Friedman, who is the chair of the Sexual Harassment Committee and Prevention Committee for our legislature.
Thank you, Monique. Hi, it's a pleasure to be here today to acknowledge the work that we've been doing in California and to celebrate all of the advocates who made it possible. In some ways, even though I was elected in 2016, I feel like I've been involved in this work for a very long time because I spent 20 years in the entertainment industry as a creative executive. And when I came into the legislature in 2016, I noticed a lot of similarities. Similarities in terms of both being areas, Hollywood more so, and certainly when I was an executive, of being an arena that is very much dominated by powerful men who are seen as being too big to fail, and populated by a world of young people and not so young people in an industry where people have to fight to have their jobs, and people who feel expendable and replaceable. And anytime you have those dynamics, and we have them in the Capitol as well, you have a situation that's really ripe for this kind of abuse from those who are willing to be abusers, and there are a lot of them out there. So when over 100 brave women in the Capitol signed a letter following the lead of the women in Hollywood who came forward, I signed on to that letter immediately because I knew that that same kind of environment that I had experienced in Hollywood existed in the Capitol. And I couldn't have imagined what happened next, but due to the bravery of a lot of our Capitol community, Pamela Lopez and others, who are willing to stand up in public in front of a bank of television cameras, people who never thought that they were going to be front page news, were willing to put their own careers on the line and their reputations on the line, really to protect other women and to do the work that we all need to do across this country, which is to change the underlying culture that allows the kind of inequality that leads to abuse. That culture change has already begun because of the bravery of the advocates who stepped forward. But it takes also the institutions and the policies to protect and elevate those voices for that change to continue. And that's what the legislators here have been working so hard on and successfully on, and what I hope the rest of the country will follow. Now, I've been had my own role to play in this, looking inward at the legislature's own policies. And I'm really proud of the work that we spent over 10 months doing, which is putting into place the most comprehensive sexual harassment prevention and response that deals with everything from having true accountability and transparency to having cutting-edge training to try to prevent abuse and save careers before these abuses happen. Because everybody, our sisters, our mothers, our daughters, our sons, all deserve a safe place to come to work. And lastly, I'd just like to say that I just came back last week from Pennsylvania from a conference of governmental ethics officers and councils who deal with sexual harassment, wondering about best practices that are out there. There are no best practices in government. California right now is setting the gold standard, the most comprehensive policies in the nation, bar none. Congress, U.S. Congress, Senate are still struggling to even begin this process of looking inward at the systemic barriers and the systemic cultures that lead to this kind of abuse. And I hope that they continue. I was brought to Ireland earlier in the year to talk to the International Conference of Women Parliamentarians, and I'll tell you, this movement that you all began is now spreading around the world, with women in England and Ireland standing up and saying, I might be an MP, but I've suffered sexual harassment and abuse from my colleagues, and it has to stop. So the change is just beginning. This is step one of what's going to be many steps, but California's taken a huge step forward, and I can't be prouder to have been a part of it. Thank you all for your interest in being here today, and thank you to all of the victims who stepped forward.
I'm Eloise Reyes. I'm an Assemblymember, also from the Inland Empire, from the San Bernardino area. I want to thank all of you for being here. I have been a very proud partner in this struggle, and along with my colleagues, have also introduced legislation that's been very important. I want to thank you all for being here today to highlight the critical steps the legislature has made in this past year to address workplace harassment and the incredible individuals who are fighting to further the Me Too movement. As women, we are keenly aware of the pervasive culture that fails to value and protect women, a culture that lives in the shadows and thrives off of fear. This is why last year I introduced AB 1870, the Stop Harassment and Reporting Extension Act, also known as the SHARE Act. This legislation would have allowed victims of workplace harassment more time to file their claims, extending the current statute of limitations, which is only 1 year, extending it to 3 years. Although this bill received bipartisan support throughout the legislative process, the effort stopped short of becoming law. It was vetoed by the governor. But much like the Me Too movement, we must continue to persist. The time has come to change our current culture, to acknowledge the struggles faced by women in the workplace and in society, and demand accountability and transparency. Upon being sworn in for my second term in the Assembly, I reintroduced the SHARE Act with the original joint authors, which includes my colleague Laura Friedman, and on the Republican side, Marie Waldron, who is the minority leader. As we have continued to say throughout this process, time's up. We must be clear that the policy we put in place dealing with workplace harassment must put the survivors first. AB 9, which is the new number of this bill, will ensure that our laws provide equity and justice rather than loopholes that leave survivors without redress. Perpetrators will no longer be able to hide behind the inequities of the law. The law will now protect the victims and provide them with additional time to bring their claims forward. We must ensure that the silence we have broken does not return. We cannot give up. We will not give up. Thank you so much for being here.
I think you can tell that this is a determined group, and we will not be silenced, we will not give up, we will not go back, lest anyone have any questions. I do want to acknowledge that our colleague, Assemblymember Adrin Nazarian, who represents this area, has joined us and has been a strong supporter. He reminds us that this is an effort that we do not and cannot take alone, that we need our male counterparts, that we need all the young men and all the fathers and grandfathers to step up and to be with us. This is a matter of human dignity, and it is very clear from the people who have spoken today that this is both a battle to prevent and a battle to discourage and hold accountable those who commit these unacceptable acts that are acts against humanity. They're not just acts against women. They demean us as a culture, they demean us as a species, and we will not allow it to go any further. Enough is enough. The time is up. And with that, thank you for being here, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
In a very concise way, and I know a lot of the legal definitions have import beyond what they appear to, like severe and pervasive. You know, what can you tell us about SB 1300 and the other bill? In a nutshell, what should women know about the changes that these measures bring about?
Right. Well, I think Mira said it very well. There's no such thing anymore as one free grope. Well, there was actually a case where the judges found that a man who, a 9/11 operator, was answering a call, and her coworker came up from behind her and put his hand underneath her blouse and groped her while she was responding to a 9/11 call. And the federal court felt that that wasn't pervasive; it was only a one-time act, and it wasn't really severe. And so we've made it clear that that kind of behavior is sufficient to warrant a lawsuit and the success of that lawsuit. Pervasive means that it doesn't have to be quite as severe, but it continues. It doesn't stop. We want employers to step up. Part of SB 1300 also encourages employers to not only train their staff, which is now the law as a result of another bill that was passed, to have training for employees, coworkers, as well as managers, but that also encourages the companies to provide bystander training so that we know that if someone sees an event happening that shouldn't be happening, they'll be given the tools so that they can intercede to end that kind of behavior. This is a community effort. This is a whole culture effort, and SB 1300 tries to address that. So the legal standard, we're advising courts what severe and pervasive is and isn't, and that's very important for that legal standard, and also the provision about bystander training, and also the provision that we have seen in a lot of instances. People have come forward, particularly younger women, impressionable women who are at the beginning of careers, and they are told that whatever behavior has transpired, forget about it, I'm going to give you a raise. And within that document that they sign, that the employer absolutely knows is a signature, is a waiver of that right to sue. We now are preventing them, any employers, from being able to get away with that kind of thing in exchange, for example, telling well, we know this for a fact. There was a case where a woman was getting $1 an hour raise, and in that 2-page document, which she was not told about what it included, was a provision that she was going to waive her right to bring any kind of complaint against the action of a perpetrator who had been consistently harassing her, abusing her, molesting her during the course of her employment. You're talking to a recovering... I'm a recovering lawyer. It's a pride, so you cannot force someone, make them hire. They call it sneaky releases. No sneaky releases, so that the employer can get off the hook for their improper behavior. That's about as good as I can make it.
I think all of us can say that we're very pleased that the court continues to see this as a valid case and that there is a chance that justice will be done.
What does this help with the celebration in today, announcing that these bills are becoming law January 1st, and that, his case was not dismissed? I mean, is it just part of the whole celebration? Do you feel like change is really happening?
I feel that change is really happening. As I said before, this is a day of hope and action and forward movement. And I think that that news is just kind of a testament to the fact that the general culture is slightly shifting to allow these people, these predators and the bastions of power, to actually be held accountable through the legal justice system, whether it be civil or criminal. And I think that, what we've done today with these laws is we have given the working woman or man or non-binary person working in this state, and hopefully this will be replicated by other states and their legislatures, legal tools to fight back and to end a culture of impunity, of corporate impunity. And what we were talking about, the silence, those sneaky tactics to silence people that have just been made illegal, those basically signal to predator culture that this was open season on anyone less powerful, less influential than the predator themselves, because they had it set up in such a way that those voices were silenced at the get-go. Those people, if you give up your right to disparage, that means that you can be fined up to $1 million for saying something about behavior, even if it's true and illegal. If you speak out against someone who has harassed you, even if it's proven that they did, because you signed that, you could be fined $1 million. Well, that's gone now, and we're saying, this is not an environment that is going to support the silencing of victims and the promotion of the status quo of predators preying on the weaker. The other thing that I didn't talk about before, but I'm so excited about, is these provisions for training, in addition to the bystander intervention training, which I think is fantastic, which is in SB 1300. There's also in 334, which we didn't talk about today specifically, but which was one of the bills that I found important for Governor Brown to sign. It passed, and it was enacted, which basically mandates training for all businesses in California that have over 5 employees on sexual harassment. And the bar used to be set at 50. And that's a really big deal because you're saying that you're going to have this informed worker populace that can recognize the signs of harassment, that can look out for each other, and that can basically stop it in its tracks again. So we're basically modeling the law to reflect the needs of our populace. We have people in vulnerable situations. We are now using the law to strengthen their position and to weaken the position of predators rather than the other way around, which has been the status quo forever.
Not all of the bills were passed. What's missing? What the change and the fight keeps going. So what do you need to change still?
Do you want to talk about your bill?
I'll talk about my particular bill, increasing the statute of limitations from 1 year to 3 years. I don't know what was missing. We did get bipartisan support, but in the end, it was one of those bills that was left on the governor's desk, and at the last minute, we received the veto message. We're not giving up. If the other women who testified on behalf of that bill are not willing to give up, then I'm not going to give up. And we're going to introduce it again. We already did. And we're going to take it through the process again and get that bipartisan support and put it on Governor Newsom's desk. And I feel certain that he's going to see the value in increasing the statute of limitations. 1 year is not enough. For many of the women, they're going through lots of this internal process of self-shame, of doubt, knowing that they have to work, knowing they have to get that paycheck. And 1 year is just not enough. Extending that to 3 years is exactly what we need. It should be extended even beyond that. But we agreed to 3 years, and that was what we put on the governor's desk. We will do it again.
Isn't that commensurate with other business claims?
Yes.
Don't they usually have 3 to 4 years?
That is correct.
So
That is correct.
Corporations get 4 years to file suit for breach of contract. And
That's
women
exactly right.
victims of sexual assault have one.
Secret settlements? Yes. Applies to everyone. Applies to everyone. Government is not exempt. And to your question about what else, the governor vetoed a bill that would have required every rape kit be tested. Right now, the law says law enforcement should test every rape kit. My bill would have said they shall be tested. The governor vetoed that. We reintroduced it on December 3rd when we went back into session. And that bill received no votes going through both houses. So we were in a quandary as to why the governor would have vetoed it. If someone is raped and then they go through the extensive testing of a rape kit and that rape kit sits there and we know that DNA evidence solves crimes, why would we not test every one of those to make sure that all perpetrators are held accountable? So.
In that same vein, I think one of the areas where we are going to continue to do more work is in the area of retaliation. We're finding studies have come out, a recent study came out by the EEOC, I believe, that show that most people don't even come forward with claims, and those who do find themselves the victims of retaliation. We have got to do more to protect people, more to protect women, so they're willing to step forward, because there are only two ways we're going to change the behavior. One is to hold the perpetrators accountable, and the other is to prevent that behavior from happening in the first place. We can teach our children. There's legislation we have in California that is trying to teach children from the earliest grades up through college about respectful relationships in the college area. If you remember the Yes Means Yes legislation, the affirmative consent, we brought that to the high school level, and now we're trying to teach youngsters at all ages, at all levels, in an age-appropriate way about that. So we're trying on the education level. But unless we are able to give people a safe environment to bring forward their complaints, we will lose the power of what we've done so far. So that's another area. If anyone else has a thought about what we are going to do going forward on this area, please.
Just about narrowing down what it means, the SB 224. Me as an actress, my employer is considered a payroll company in Chicago. I'll never meet my quote-unquote employer. So how this legislation affects me and the entire entertainment industry is the fact that so many of our relationships, employer-like relationships, are to do with people who have either not yet hired us or not specifically hired us, but indirectly affect our career, so their actions can ruin a person, so producers, directors, but not exclusively to those people. If you can affect someone else's career and you go about the business of ruining them, you will be responsible under this SB 224 as an employer responsibility. So, thank you.
Unless there are any other questions, and everyone here will be available when we're done to answer any one-on-one questions you might have. Thank you for being here. We have only just begun. We are a determined group. We are going to make the change that's important, and we appreciate your willingness to share this information and the new laws that are becoming effective January 1st. They are going to have tremendous impact. People need to know about them. We're going to continue this work going forward so that the workplace will be free of harassment for everyone, so that, as Mira so eloquently pointed out, we are a meritocracy. If you work hard, you play by the rules, and do your best, it doesn't matter what you look like, what you believe, or anything else. You are going to be judged by the success of your work, the quality of your character, and the things that are what make this country the great promise and hope of the future for us all. Thank you so much.